In the fossil record, there is a whisper about a giant most of us never hear in school, an ape so massive that its shadow, if it stood beside us, would blot out the doorway. We call it Gigantopithecus, and though it lives now only in teeth and jaw fragments, those fragments speak volumes. I'm your guide today, a science communicator who studies the stories bones tell, and I want you to meet a specialist of force, a heavyweight that tried to outgrow the hunger of changing worlds. Our trail begins in a Hong Kong herbal shop in the 1930s, where the paleontologist Ralph von Koenigswald picked through a tray of dragon bones ground for medicine and spotted a tooth the size of a child's thumb. That tooth led to caves across southern China, northern Vietnam, and Thailand, where miners, monks, and scientists would later find more colossal molars and stout mandibles sealed in limestone. With no skull or skeleton, we became detectives in miniature, reading enamel like tree rings. Thick crowns, flat grinding surfaces, and heavy jaws point to a diet of tough, fibrous plants. Many imagine bamboo stalks crushed between slow, deliberate bites, the way a panda handles its comb, and indeed the chemistry of the teeth shows forest foods from shade-loving plants. But it was not a narrow cartoon giant. It probably mixed fruits, leaves, and fallback roots when times got lean. Proteins preserved in the enamel molecular time capsuled Gigantopithecus to the orangutan branch of the great apes, cousins across a vanished canopy. How big was it? Estimates vary because size estimates from teeth are tricky. But think of an ape heavier than a modern gorilla, perhaps 2 to 3 times the mass of an average person, with a chest built like a moving wall. Standing upright it might brush 3 meters, but like other apes it likely spent most time on all fours, knuckles pressing into leaf litter, shoulders rolling beneath a shag of copper or soot-colored hair. Picture it in the dim green of Pleistocene forests, fog lifting from karst hills, cicadas stitching a constant electric hum, figs dropping like soft drums, and somewhere a river cutting through terraces of bamboo. To travel here, we also meet people of today who help us imagine yesterday. Maya, a wildlife artist who sketches from fossil casts, and Lan, a caver from BSESN who grew up at a forest edge. When Maya runs her pencil over the casts, she says the teeth feel like architecture rather than tools. When Lan descends into the cave chambers where the fossils rest, her headlamp finds stalagmites like organ pipes, and the limestone tastes faintly of dust and time. From their eyes, we see the ape not as a monster, but as a neighbor bound to trees. Everything about its body tells us it was an expert of closed canopy life, massive jaws for slow grinding, sturdy limbs for short ranging on the ground, and the calm, energy-saving behaviors that large herbivores adopt. In a stable forest, that's a winning combination. Yet the planet does not sign peace treaties with stability. Around 300,000 years ago, rhythms of climate and monsoon began to push those forests too thin. Grasslands crept in like a quiet tide, rivers shifted, soils dried, and fruiting seasons missed their cues. To survive such changes, you need flexibility either in what you eat, how you move, or how far your population can travel between resource patches. Size is a superpower when food is steady. When food fragments, size becomes a tax. And for a giant who loves shade, even a small tear in the canopy can feel like a world unraveling. You might ask how we can draw a family tree from fragments this small. In hot, wet climates DNA disappears, and even collagen breaks down, but tooth enamel is ceramic and locks away proteins for ages. By sequencing those proteins from a Gigantopithecus molar, researchers placed it as a cousin of living orangutans. That fits geography. Orangutans once ranged widely across Southeast Asia, and so did these giants. Tiny scratches and pits on the teeth show frequent grinding of tough, silica-rich plants and seasonal fruit when the canopy allowed. Lan laughs that in her valley, you cannot walk 10 steps without bamboo. The ape likely enjoyed the same green avenues. Yet specialists thrive only when their world stays generous. During the Middle Pleistocene, monsoon rhythms nudged closed forests into patchy woodland and grass. Small primates could weave between patches. A heavyweight burns calories with every gamble. Land's father, a rice farmer, puts it simply, big bodies need big safety margins. If the next fruiting grove is 2 valleys away, leaving home becomes risky. Cave sites mapped the ape's loyalty to forested karst, but as green corridors narrowed, choices shrank. There is no evidence the species survived into folklore. Its signal fades by near 300,000 years ago. What vanished was not power, but a match between appetite and landscape. And that is where our story turns next. We step into the mechanics of disappearance with a toolkit that reads landscapes as if they were diaries. In the caves where Gigantopithecus teeth turn up, the sediments hold clues, grains of quartz that trap electrons from natural radiation, pollen that drifts from hillsides, charcoal from old fires, even tiny shells from cave pools. Using luminescence dating, geologists can tell when grains last saw sunlight. Add in uranium series dates from cave calcite and the age brackets tighten. Around the layers that hold the giant's teeth, the signals converge on the middle part of the last 500,000 years. It is not one dramatic cliff, but a phased retreat. Forests ebb and flow, then tip toward open woodland and grass. In that mosaic, a giant herbivore faces to linked pressures, finding enough of the right calories and finding them close enough together to make travel efficient. Maya, our artist, once asked a field team to map a day in the life of a large ape in patchy habitat. They drew a clock of feeding, walking, resting, and chewing. What changed in the model was not only the distance between meals, but the cost of every decision. A gorilla can shift from fruits to leaves because its body already invests in fermentation and gut volume. A grazer can nose down into grasslands. A nimble macaque can sprint to new trees. Gigantopithecus carried the bills of being huge without the benefit of speed or tree climbing. Its jaws and teeth could not slice grass like a horse, and its mass would have made long daily journeys expensive. As forests thinned and broke apart, small patches may have still held bamboo and fruit, but the distances between safe, dense patches grew. And traveling through open areas means new risks, heat, predators, and simply the chance of not finding what you burn to reach. Every animal does a kind of math: energy in, energy out. For a giant, that math grows unforgiving when the columns on the left shrink. Big bodies also tied to slow life histories, fewer young, long nursing, years to mature. If a mother loses a season of food, she may skip ovulation. If she travels farther to eat, she risks losing the strength to carry and defend her infant. Multiply that across decades and across a range, and a population that looks solid on a map can slide quietly below replacement. When field teams sift cave sediments grain by grain, they often find more than one story in the same layer: teeth from forest dwellers beside bones from animals of grassy edges. That mix captures the tug of habitats in transition. Our team once hiked a karst ridge above a valley now carved with farms and roads. Land stopped where a cave mouth yawns above a stand of bamboo and told us how her grandmother kept a mental map of fruiting trees, a map that had to be updated each year as storms and clearing changed the forest. Imagine such a map for a creature that weighs several hundred kilograms. Each dot must be large enough to feed it, safe enough to rest, and close enough to reach without spending the meal before you arrive. This is what we mean when we say extinction can be slow and local before it is final. Groups wink out one by one as corridors fail, and even if some pockets persist, they become too small to buffer bad years. There is another piece a social animal learns from elders: where and when to eat. If droughts or fires erase reliable patterns, knowledge can fail with the teachers. By the time the caves fall silent of giant teeth, other primates still scamper in. Deer and bovids expand on the plains. The climate continues its pulse. Humans, in any form, are unlikely to be the main driver here. The timing hints that climate and habitat were enough. What we inherit is the lesson that strength without flexibility a brittle advantage, and that the cost of being big is paid in the currency of options. Add to that the quirks of bamboo. Many species flower in long cycles and then die together across wide areas, turning a pantry into an empty shelf for months. Animals that rely on bamboo either switch foods, store fat, or move to other valleys. A giant tied to shade and short-ranging may do none well. Fire compounds the stress. Charcoal in the sediments records more burning in some intervals. Grasses colonize scorched patches quickly. Closed forest returns slowly. Topography then sorts winners and losers. Steep ravines and north-facing slopes can hold moisture little refugia where specialists hang on, but to few refugia mean isolated pockets and fewer mates. Meanwhile, other mammals adapt around the edges. Deer slip between thickets. Monkeys grab figs at margins. A giant ape that cannot turn grass into dinner watches the buffet shift out of reach. Orangutans, living cousins, survived by retreating to island rainforests where sea levels created barriers and refuges. Gigantopithecus had no such island luck inland. When too many ecological doors stayed open to grass and shut to shade, the giant's strategy frayed. It could not change. Now we turn from the past to what it gives us. Gigantopithecus is not a parable written to scold us. It is a case study in how biology and landscape dance together, and how even the largest steps can stumble when the music changes. When students ask me whether giants like this could exist unseen today, I answer with what we have, not rumor, but dates, sediments, proteins, and patterns. The caves where its teeth sleep have been sifted by careful hands. The layers that once caught drip water have been read like ledgers. The trail ends in the middle Pleistocene, and it ends quietly. And that quiet ending leaves us with several bright lessons. First, specialization cuts both ways. It can let a species turn a hard landscape into a home until the leverage point moves. In this case, the leverage was forest structure and the reliability of bulky, fibrous foods. Second, size is a strategy with bills that come due. A large herbivore survives by finding predictability. When predictability erodes, margins vanish. Third, extinction is often a geography problem. We talk about climate, but what animals feel is distance between trees that fruit, streams that run, resting places that stay safe. Change the distances and you change the math of life. Maya puts it a different way when she looks at her sketches. Giants are not just big, they are big in a specific world. Change the world, and the drawing needs new lines. Land has her own lesson. On our last evening in the field, she took us to the threshold of a cave where wind carries the smell of wet stone, and she told us how her grandmother's map of fruiting trees has become a memory she holds mostly for love. The farms below feed families, the roads carry children to school, and the forest is now a chain of headwaters rather than a sea. Listening, I realized our work is not only to hold fossils, but to measure how many ways a life can fit a place. That is why the story of a vanished ant belongs in conversations about living apes. Orangutans, gorillas, chimpanzees all depend on forests that are changing. They still have bodies tuned to certain maps, density of fruit, shade to rest, paths to move without burning their budgets. Protecting them means more than counting trees. It means keeping corridors open, letting rivers keep their seasonal pulse, and planting landscapes so that animals do not spend tomorrow's calories to reach today's meal. People sometimes ask whether we could bring Gigantopithecus back. The short answer is no. In humid tropics, DNA does not last. What we have are proteins in enamel. Enough for relationships, but not for genomes. Even if we could conjure a proxy, where would we put it? The Pleistocene map that made a giant's life viable is gone. A better question is how to keep ecosystems generous enough that today's specialists do not face yesterday's trap. We can start by seeing the forest from the point of view of an animal that must eat, rest, raise young, and travel without guessing wrong too often. That empathy makes the science stronger. There is also a human-scale message here. The path from a Hong Kong apothecary to a proteomics lab is really a path about curiosity. Someone asked, What is this tooth and why is it so big? Someone else asked, can we capture any molecule from an animal after hundreds of thousands of years? That chain of questions grew into a bridge across time. I keep a cast of a Gigantopithecus molar on my desk. When students hold it, they almost always turn it in their fingers, weigh it, and go quiet. The tooth is not frightening. It is heavy, precise, and patient. You can see how it grew layer by layer, how it planned for grinding, how it kept a life going in a world that included danger and hunger, but also abundance. You can also see the limits. Teeth do not lie about diets. They do not promise that a giant can suddenly graze like a horse or range like an antelope. When I say size helps until your food disappears, I am not being poetic. I am reading what the tooth says. A body can carry strength and still be boxed in by the shape of the buffet. And although humans were probably not the authors of this extinction, we have become authors of many others. So, we can take the humility offered here and apply it forward. If we change a landscape, we must count the costs in distances and in seasons, not just in hectares. Conservation becomes a design problem, a question of how to keep options large for bodies that need room. In practice, that means linking forest fragments so fruiting trees are within reach, giving bamboo time to recover, and protecting caves as archives. Honor local memory like land's map. Pair it with satellites so we see both leaf and landscape. Do these things and living apes keep choices. Ignore them and we build narrow alleys that closed around the largest ape that ever lived. The good news is we can widen options with reserves, community forests, plant corridors. Better news is that on doors, and awe is fuel. It keeps us asking questions.